Welcome to the Thursday Learning Bhagavatam class. Hope you're all well. Today we're in for a treat. We've got Citi Śakti Mataji giving us a class on Canto 9, Liberation, and Chapter 10, the Pastimes of the Supreme Lord Rāmacandra. Hare Krishna Mataji, welcome back, and good to see you. Over to you, Hari Bol.
Good to see you. Good to see everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome. And it's nice to be with all of you again. Let's start with Mangalacharan, and then we can get into this beautiful chapter. Umagyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are covering chapter 10 from Canto 9, entitled The Pastimes of Lord Rāmacandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Ramayana, Lord Ram's pastimes happened a long time ago. They happened in Satyug, which was actually millions of years ago. And yet this glorious pastime of Lord Rāmacandra and his brothers and Sita Devi continues to be told, whether people are deeply devotional, whether they have watched it because it's on, I don't know, ZTV or Asta, whether their grandmother or uncle or auntie told them the story. Most people are familiar with the story of Ramayana, even non-Indians. Everybody knows about Diwali and the Festival of Lights. Okay, so Lord Ram has made it into everybody's vocabulary somehow or another. At the same time, the Ramayana is probably one of the most misunderstood pastimes in terms of incarnations of Krishna, because Lord Ramachandra's life as a monarch, life as an ascetic, life as a husband, life as a son, and life as a leader and a father brings up many transcendental and wonderful activities and attractive qualities, but also brings up things that leave people a bit bewildered. You will meet many people who sit on the fence as to whether they are fans of Lord Ram or not. Yes? And especially whether they have an issue with the dynamic between him and his father and mothers, whether it's his dynamic with Sita Devi, especially post the kidnapping of Sita Devi, whether it's how he took counsel from his advisors and listened to a washerman and judged his leadership on that. There's so many pastimes. So it's interesting that even though the Ramayana is actually this huge, if you look at Valmiki's Ramayana, it's a huge volume of work, huge volume of work. But actually in the Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami actually gives it in a very summarized version. And it's interesting because in the summary of Shukadev Goswami and in Srila Prabhupada's purports, Srila Prabhupada takes the opportunity to debunk some of the myths and clarify some of the confusion. And so does Shukadev Goswami. He gets less into the detail and more into the principle. I was thinking, I actually want to I know you've already done all the verses, but I do want to recite verse 10, the Sanskrit and the translation. It invites auspiciousness. And also it's the beginning of where Sukadev Goswami already starts to deconstruct people's misconceptions. So in text 3, chapter 10, he says, Tashanucharitam Rajan Rishibhish Tattva Darshibhi Shrutam Hi Varnitam Bhuri Tvaya Sita Pater Muhu. And he says, O King Parikshit, the transcendental activities of Lord Rāmacandra have been described by great saintly persons who have seen the truth. Because you have heard again and again about Lord Rāmacandra, the husband of Mother Sita, I shall describe these activities only in brief. Please listen. Please listen. I mean, Parikshit Maharaj is surrendered. He's already listening. But Shukadev Goswami is really encouraging Parikshit Maharaj to listen very carefully to this summary, even though he's heard it again and again. Because one thing that Shukadev Goswami is pointing out here is that because Lord Ram's pastimes had happened such a long time ago, since those pastimes have happened, the longer it's been since something's happened, the more likely it is to be misunderstood, right? If anyone's ever played Chinese whispers, it doesn't take long for the original message to get lost. It gets lost by the third or fourth person. Yes? So Shukadev Goswami is inviting the reader and inviting Parikshit Maharaj, really saying, even though you've heard this so many times, I won't go into so many details, but I still want you to listen to this summary. Okay? And Srila Prabhupada comments on this. He really specifically picks up on this to point out to us that there are many, many versions of any pastime. There are many versions of even ordinary history of an ordinary person. Okay, so what to speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And he goes on to actually explain that, this, because Krishna has got so many forms, even in this pastime, there's Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughan, they're all actually Vishnu Tattva. They're all incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can exist. So Krishna's incarnations can exist in any part of his creation, but all of them exist permanently and eternally, and they are there as individual personalities. What does this mean? What does it mean? They have their own individual devotees. Okay? There are in existence souls who are completely dedicated to Lord Rāmacandra. There are souls who are devout to Lakshman, devout to Shatrughan, devout to Bharat. We may not know them. They may not exist right now in our vicinity. But if you look at all of the manifestation of everything, what we're hearing is because Krishna's various individual personalities and incarnations are there eternally, permanently, and can be anywhere in all of creation, spiritual and material, as individual personalities, and they're all equally powerful. They will also have their own devotees. This is a really important point for us to understand, because Bhagavatam very explicitly states Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, right? There's all these expansions, incarnations, expansions of expansions, partial expansions, but you are the original. So all of them are candles. They're equally potent. Okay, they have all qualities of Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they don't all manifest every single one because it's not unnecessary. But you are the original. So if they're all candles, you're the original candle with which you have manifested or lit the other candles. And you do this at home. When you light many candles, you might light one and then use that to light the others. We are familiar with this. So what Srila Prabhupada starts to emphasize from the beginning is that, first of all, we cannot expect to be able to understand the position, the pastimes, the motives, of personalities who are permanent, eternal, can exist anywhere, and are fully the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just simply through ordinary descriptions. He really emphasizes this point of, there's so many versions of Ramayana following Valmiki's Ramayana, even around the time of Valmiki's Ramayana, that it can be very easy to lose the message. And Shukadev Goswami is also very aware of this, which is why, even though Parikshit Maharaj has heard the pastime 70 times, he says, I'm going to summarize it. Now you listen. Why? He uses this phrase, Tattva Darshibhi. Or these Tattva Darshis, as Prabhupada calls them. He says a Tattva Darshi, a Tattva Darshi is somebody who is saintly and who has seen the absolute truth. How have they seen the absolute truth? What does that mean? What does it mean to see the absolute truth? A Tattva Darshi isn't just somebody who's very philosophically strong or knows the detail of every pastime or story. Actually, there are people who hold PhDs where their thesis is the Ramayana. They know details that maybe even people who give class in the temple on the Ramayana don't know and don't mention. They'll give detail probably that Shukadev Goswami hasn't even covered in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But they are trying to understand a person with their intelligence. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna tells Arjuna, just try to learn the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master, inquire submissively, render service. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they've seen the truth. The truth of what? The truth of who Krishna actually is. The truth of who Lord Ram actually is. Not just his activities in a historical sense and detail. People will use detail and happenings to figure out someone's motive. But actually, who really understands the motive of a person? The person who knows that person as a person, not as a position, not just in detail of activities, and especially the person who has affection. Those who have seen the absolute truth have seen the absolute truth because the absolute truth has decided to show himself to them. Not because they got the facts right, not because they know more details than anybody else, but because they love him. In any incarnation, Krishna doesn't reveal himself, Lord Ram doesn't reveal himself to those who have his most accurate biodata. He reveals himself to those who have affection for him. Even when we look at our human interactions, if you want to get to know a person, you're not going to really get to know them from their biodata. Even if you meet them, how much they reveal to you about themselves isn't just simply a matter of telling you what they do and their activities. But really, when people start to open up, they start to tell you why they do what they do. And when do we reveal why we do what we do and how we do what we do? We only do that when we start to trust that the other person has no ulterior motives. We trust them. We trust that they have our best interests at heart, that they're not just there to get something out of us, that their relationship with us is not just transactional. So Srila Prabhupada spends a significant amount of time emphasizing this, because if we really want to understand Ramayana without getting swayed by the detail and comparison and trying to look at what feels good to us, because there are things that happen in the Ramayana which on a humanity level are going to jar. They're going to jar most people. They'll get caught up in the detail without understanding the principle. But this is what Krishna does. When he comes in any of his incarnations, he's not there to reveal himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead to everyone. Why does he come? He comes to annihilate, okay, destroy that which is destroying those who want to connect with him, those who are destroying the process that people have to connect with him. Okay, so it tells us this in the Gita. He comes to display his pastimes for those who will recognize him and take pleasure in those pastimes. And he comes to build that bridge again that others have broken so people can connect with him. That's what re-establishing religious principles is. Religion is really activities that are pleasing to Krishna, which is, or Lord Ram, whatever brings us close to them. That is a religious activity. Okay, so this Tattvadarshi is Shukadev Goswami is emphasizing to Parikshit Maharaj and to anybody else who's listening that it's not just a case of what you hear, but who you hear from. And make sure that when you're hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you're hearing from somebody who has seen the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the only way to see the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to have, really, it depends on how much affection you have for him. An affectionate person, when you love someone and you care for them, it's not about what you can get out of them. And many people, most people, approach God in whatever incarnation, even when they don't know him on a first name basis, in quite a transactional way. What am I going to get out of this? Is this going to relieve distress? Is this going to bring me more wealth? Is this going to interest me, quench my thirst for knowledge, my curiosity? Okay, these are all transactional ways of approaching a deeply caring source of everything and everyone. But when we approach with care and affection in the interest of what would be pleasing to you, Krishna? What would be pleasing to you, Lord Rāmacandra? Just like so many of his devotees did. Monkeys. Lord Ram didn't, dismiss anyone. Talk about unity and diversity. He wasn't, and forget about racism and sexism. He didn't even care what species the personalities who were connecting with him were. But they were bound by affection. So when we hear, the motive of the person we hear from has a huge influence on the impact of what we're hearing has on us. Okay, so when Krishna says, one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities doesn't come here again, to understand the transcendental nature of his appearance and activities, we have to hear from these tattva-darshis. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada gave us so much so that we can also become tattva-darshis, so that we can also speak about the Lord with affection. We can hear about him with affection, not with the voice of lust, which says, what about me? What are you going to give me, Krishna? What am I going to get out of this? How are you making arrangements to make my life easier? But what can I offer you? What about you? You've been waiting for me for millennia, patiently, following me everywhere, facilitating everything, so that whether I want to stay away from you or whether I want to come close, now it's my turn to offer something back to you. So I think this is such a important point that we can easily overlook. Okay, because you look at Lord Rāmachandra's activities, sometimes they're based on people's imagination. Like if you watch a TV series, and there've been lots of TV serials. In my lifetime, I've seen a lot of and heard about a lot of TV renditions of the Ramayana. And some have been extremely devotional. And some have just been created to give drama. to get a hit TV series, to pull in the punters, to keep people watching. Okay? And people have exercised their imagination, their speculation, their material sentiments. They want it to be a particular way, so they adjust the story. And when people aren't hearing and reading, they get carried away with what they watch. And you'll be amazed, because the number of people I've met who will read Lord Ram's pastimes in the books and then go, oh, but in the TV series, this happened. Like, when did the TV series become an authority compared to the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? When did we start taking an entertainment channel as the authority on what's shastrically correct? If you look at the beginning of all of the TV series, they usually have this disclaimer, and they will say, oh, here we go. They will say something like, these are based on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Valmiki's Ramayana. They will say based on. Based on is very loose. Based on is very loose. So, this, be careful who and what you hear from, because it really has a profound impact. Parampara doesn't just mean coming in disciplic succession by initiation and name and place and person. What it actually really refers to is not just that we've received, but we've accepted. Okay? Receive, the teacher to come in parampara, okay, being handed down the knowledge, means they've also received it. So how are we receiving it? What is our consciousness? Because if we're really ready to receive, we are willing to also hear the discrepancies or the perceived discrepancies, and sit with the discomfort it might cause for us, and look at, if this is causing a discomfort for me, what Maya or illusion in me is it testing? Why do I need the pastimes of the Lord to be satisfying to my intellect and to make sense to me all the time? Because actually, if he was so easily conceived, if he's so conceivable and so understandable, that means there's no greater than our own mind and our own thinking. We struggle to understand another human being. Right? That's on a normal human platform. In what world do we think that we're going to understand every single thing that Lord Rāmacandra did? But we can. We can when we hear from the right source. And so we hear so many things. I'm not going to go into the entire pastime of, as you've already read the chapter. But this is the important thing. If you're looking to hear from someone, look at their level of affection. Look at what their interest is. Is their interest to glorify Krishna? Is it to glorify themselves? Is their interest to help you to understand the things that might seem like a discrepancy, or to gloss over the discrepancies and say, oh, it's allegorical, or that's not actually what it meant, or, some people got the pastime a little bit wrong, there's another version? Why fudge it? Because actually, Guru's service isn't meant to be to just make us feel comfortable all the time. Guru means heavy. The words of the Guru weigh heavy on the false ego. Okay? Because depending on what birth you've taken, different things in Ramayana are going to pinch you. Right? Different things are going to affect you in the Ramayana. In any pastime of the Lord, if you read Bhagavatam, I have no doubt all of you who are reading, you have read things in there, either in the purports of the verses that have made you go, ouch. Okay? That have made you go, I'm finding this chapter really hard. I'm finding this verse really hard. Maybe I should put this away. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't get it. Why would God behave like that? Or why would Guru behave like that? This doesn't fit with today's standard. This doesn't fit with today's society. Society is always changing because it's relative, but the absolute truth stays the same. So anyway, I don't want to labor the point, but this point of hearing, and this is why sanghas like this are so important, because it helps us to reset our compass, especially if you've been hearing something for a long time. Parikshit Maharaj had heard this many times. Shukadev Goswami says, I won't go into the detail, but listen, because he knew that the way he would speak about Lord Rāmacandra would correct any misgivings or confusion or improperly expressed or received pastimes about Lord Rāmacandra, even to Parikshit Maharaj, who is a great devotee. Okay, so let's go through some of these. Okay, I'm going to clear up some of the misconceptions which are expressed and talked about in this particular chapter. And there are many more. So the first one is probably a very obvious one. Okay, the one that's probably talked about a lot is the separation between Sita and Ram. Separation between Sita and Ram. How could a demon, if Rāmacandra and Lord Rāmacandra and Sita Devi are the divine couple, how could a demon captivate Sita? How could a demon cheat her? She is the source, of divine femininity. Okay? How could a person absorbed in material consciousness cheat her? How could he trick Ram? How could he trick Lakshman? How does this happen? Actually, in the purport to this verse where it describes the kidnapping of Sita and the forceful abduction of Sita, which actually it's very emphatic that it's Ravan's, again, what about me? That transactional. I don't want God, I want his opulence. Okay, what can you do for me? It's such an intoxicating voice. I want, I need, this is mine. That he forgot who she was connected to. He had no awareness of who she was connected to. He was blinkered by his desires. Okay, and this can happen to us as well. When we get blinkered by neediness, when we have a relationship with things and situations in this world which make us think that I can't exist unless I have that. I can't even engage in my devotional service unless I have that. We start to become blinkered to Krishna's plan. Okay, and we start to get into a mentality of the voice of lust is to enjoy Krishna's opulence separately from him. And then we forget, we lose the connection of where it was all coming from. And so because of this, he made a very grave mistake and abducted Sita. But actually, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that actually it's not possible to separate Ram and Sita. And so for the purposes of the pastime, the only Sita that Ravan was able to abduct was Maya Sita. Because it's not actually possible to cheat Krishna. If we cheat Krishna, we'll get cheated. Okay, if we cheat Krishna, we'll get cheated. So actually, Srila Prabhupada, he explains really quite deep tattva in this, in the purport. This is actually in text 11. He explains some really deep tattva. He says, Rāmacandra is trying to do many things at the same time, as Krishna does in every incarnation. Because on the one hand, he's expressing and showing his divinity to those who want to see it and those who are qualified to see it. At the same time, he's also showing humanity, the vulnerabilities of humanity, as well as the possibility of humanity rising above the vulnerabilities and accessing our own divinity. And so he's lamenting after his wife is abducted. And, Prabhupada explains that he's setting an example that if you're too attached to something or someone, then when it is taken away, then one laments. Now, he then goes on to say, but actually, Lord Rāmacandра's sentiments towards Sita Devi were actually ecstatic. It is their divine love being expressed in the Vipralamba mood, that they're together by their separation, that when they think of each other, this Ladini Shakti, this pleasure-giving potency is what actually is part of the mellow of conjugal love. Okay, so there's different aspects to conjugal love, but in the transcendental realm, Vipralamba or separation doesn't create separation, it creates even more union. We may experience a shadow version, have a human experience of this shadow version of it. So, for example, even people who are separated here, regardless of their type of relationship, when you miss a person, you think of them more, right? And you connect with them in that thinking of them, but it's not the same thing as being with them. Whereas Vipralambha ecstasy is described as an even higher pleasure than being with or being in union. So for Lord Rāmacandra, although he was displaying what on the surface appeared to be very human sentiments of, oh, I'm missing my wife, I'm angry, I need to go rescue her, who's done this? At the same time, he was simultaneously experiencing ecstasy. Okay, Srila Prabhupada says, thus when Lord Rāmacandra was separated from Sita, all these spiritual symptoms were manifested, because the Lord is neither impersonal nor impotent. Rather, he is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, the eternal form of knowledge and bliss. Thus, he has all the symptoms of spiritual bliss. So, it is really important for devotees to understand this. Otherwise, we will get caught up in the humanity of it, and then the testing of Sita Devi when she walks into the fire. Again, Srila Prabhupada elaborates. Actually, it's that yagya or that fire is required so that the Maya Sita Devi can be discarded. She's no longer needed, and the real Sita can be returned to or be shown to be back with Lord Rāmacandra. But actually, where does she go? When Maya Sita goes to goes to Ravan, although he thinks himself Lord, when she goes to Ravan, actually the real Sita is there, nestled very comfortably in Rāmachandra's heart, because she never leaves that throne. So it's really important, this it's not a human separation. If you measure it on the human separation level, then you get caught up in the whole dynamics of husband and wife. People get upset. Why would Ram test her? She's pure. She doesn't do anything. She didn't do anything. Ravan wasn't even able to touch. And actually, even the Maya version of Sita, Ravan wasn't able to touch. So this is one of the issues of contention with the pastime of with the pastimes of Lord Rāmacandra. Also, one thing that Srila Prabhupada also emphasizes in these purports, and the verses emphasize, is some of the ways we can understand the Lord taking assistance. So there's a description here in these verses where Lord Rāmacandra, he sits down on the beach and he meditates and waits for the ocean to approach him because he wants to cross over to Lanka. And when she doesn't come, with his glance, he expresses his anger, just with his glance. And with that glance, everyone and everything in the ocean becomes fearful, including the ocean herself. And she recites, when she comes to surrender, she actually says a beautiful thing. She says a very beautiful thing to him. She says to him that even though my waters are just, they're yours, you can cross them easily. Just literally, you can walk across them. You are the controller of material nature. Material nature is never going to control you. Still, build a bridge. Build a bridge, because what she's emphasizing is people won't recognize your opulence, your superiority, your magnanimity, your super excellent pastimes, unless you make them obvious. So these mountaintops with trees, these rocks, these stones, whether they were the tiny little pebbles carried by the squirrels, or they were the massive mountaintops carried by Hanuman, they floated on the ocean. Now, I don't know if any of you follow much in terms of like geology and things like that. Sometimes you get forwarded these things on WhatsApp, and how geologists have studied, the rocks that Lord Ram used. And, you'll hear things like, oh, there was a special type of rock which was porous and has the ability to float. And you'll hear these different things. And, so I think someone years ago sent me a Google satellite picture that you can still see the bridge that Lord Ram built, but it's no longer floating. Whether these are porous rocks that float, or we're talking about gravity, or anti-gravity, and that's why planets are in the sky, and there's all these forces, but actually ultimately it is all the Supreme Personality of Godhead's opulence, is all his abilities, because gravity wouldn't work unless it had come from him, right? These rocks wouldn't be porous unless it had come from him. So it's not so much that his opulence is shown because he waves some magic wand and suddenly things which are heavy become light. It's not necessarily that. It's, yes, there's his Shakti, that everything moves according to his will. So that which is heavy can become light at the drop of a hat. He who is weak can become strong, right? This is empowerment. Okay, this is what empowerment is. Spiritual empowerment means going beyond your karma. What does that mean? Karma means that which is allotted to you. But when we are spiritually empowered, it's not just what you have. That is your facility to serve. Krishna can endow you with so much more, and he can make what is taking you in one direction completely do an about turn. And he can make something that behaves one way behave completely the opposite way. Okay? This is spiritual empowerment. It is better than, it is more dynamic, it is more joyful, it is more exciting than any other kind of empowerment. I don't care what self-help books you read. All right? Spiritual empowerment that comes by sincerely pleasing Krishna, sincerely pleasing Guru, sincerely pleasing the Vaishnavas, recognizing that I don't have so much to offer you, but I will offer you everything I have. This was the position of the monkeys, the bears, the squirrels. You know, if you were to fight a big demon, would you turn to the forest animals? No. But they offered everything they had. Krishna looks at not just what we offer, but what we hold back. And they didn't hold back anything. And so Lord Rāmacandra just accepted them with his whole heart, because they didn't restrict themselves by thinking, oh, I'm too small, I'm too weak, I'm too this, I'm too that, I don't speak the language, I don't do this, how am I going to help you? No, nothing. Nothing like that, you know? And because of that, they were spiritually empowered. There's a very nice phrase, it really keeps a lot of us going, that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would often say, that when we serve, when we're about to serve, when we serve beyond our capacity, okay? When we serve beyond our capacity and yet act without hesitation, that is the moment that spiritual empowerment occurs. There is so much solace in that statement, and that statement comes so alive in these pastimes, because by ordinary standards, you look at the people and the circumstances, who is helping Ram? They're not human beings. I'm not even talking about the forest animals. It's the ocean. The ocean's helping. The ocean animals, the wind, nature. I mean, all of these things help to actually show us really how wonderful Lord Rāmacandra is. Because this is one of the ways Krishna shows us that it doesn't matter to me really what body you're in, what opulences you have, what disabilities you have, what challenges you have, physical, psychological. None of that really matters. I'm looking to see how much of that will you use to connect with me. Because if you don't limit yourself, then you don't limit me. See, in many ways, when we make a plan or get set on a plan, get attached to the plan, and particularly we don't tend to get attached to the plan, we tend to get attached to the result of the plan, okay? We kind of choke Krishna because we limit his options for reciprocation. By getting fixated that it can only go this way, this is the best way for it to happen. We say to Krishna, right, I know you could offer me anything, but I'm going to give you this very narrow set of options because this is what I think, you know? So they didn't have this, and so they were spiritually empowered. Prabhupada talks about this, the difference between material power and spiritual empowerment is vast. You break the ceiling of your karma. It's better than any astrological reading, any, gemstones to do with the planets that you might wear on your fingers, okay, any yantras or mantras or tantras you have for your karma. This spiritual empowerment is enabled by love and trust. And when we hear the Lord's pastimes from the mouths of those who love and trust him in whichever incarnation, we're less likely to misunderstand him. We're less likely to try and make measurements and comparisons based on the human dynamic. And we are more likely to develop the affectionate trust for him that enables that empowerment, where we can go beyond our karma. So actually, when Shukadev Goswami is saying to Parikshit Maharaj, please listen to what I have to say. He is very much trying to give Parikshit Maharaj the Ramayana in such a way that the only thing it does for Parikshit Maharaj is increase his affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rather than lead to more confusion. So when you read these next few chapters, my invitation to all of you is that don't get too caught up in there's details missing. It's too much of a summary. Because what you'll be given in these chapters is an understanding that goes beyond the detail. An understanding that will enable you to receive the Ramayana in such a way that it deepens your devotion. So put aside whatever series you watched, put aside the stories you heard, put aside the misconceptions you might have, the challenges you might have from some of the things that happen in the pastimes that make you feel uncomfortable in the identity you have in this lifetime. Put it aside. And as Shukadev Goswami says, please listen. So we have about 15 minutes left. Because of the nature of this pastime, I imagine that devotees might have their own realizations, comments, and even questions. So I want to leave some time for us to churn and to discuss. So I'm going to hand over to you. Dharmendra, I'll let you facilitate as you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Mataji. If anyone has any questions, please do raise your hand. I had so many on this subject matter, but I'll go to one that is generic, I'd say. In terms of where Sita Mataji was kept in Lanka, it was called Ashok Vatika. Is there a meaning behind that, basically? Because she didn't stay where the opulence was. She didn't stay in the palaces, etc. She stayed outside of the palaces. So I'm just wondering whether Ashok Vatika means something or not.
I don't know so much about what Ashok Vatika itself means. I mean, I will self-profess that I'm not an expert on Ramayana itself, especially the detail. But Sita Devi didn't, even though she is the source of all opulence, she will not reside where she is separated from her beloved. And Ravan was enjoying Krishna's opulence separately from him. He was enjoying Rāmacandра's opulence separately from him. He wanted to negate the source. So there is no way that the real opulence, which is Sita Devi, is going to reside there. So, and also she was refusing Ravan. So he kept her away from the main palace. Now, Ravan had his many, many reasons. You can psychoanalyze him, okay? Because first of all, Sita Devi, because she was refusing him, he's, one of the things that would have disturbed him is he doesn't want any of the other consorts or queens to see him being weakened, right? It weakens his position and his control over them. The other side is he actually can't touch her. Even if she'd not put up a fight, he wouldn't have been allowed to touch her. But that Ashoka, where the Ashoka trees are, I don't know the detail around, and maybe somebody on this Zoom call knows a bit more about that particular spot and its significance. But certainly my understanding is she's kept separate from his perspective because he doesn't want to be shamed and embarrassed, and so he'll imprison her. But from her perspective, she doesn't want to be, real opulence. She doesn't go where opulence is separated from the Lord. Even in our lives, we'll see that. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how much beauty, fame, etc. When it's enjoyed separately from Krishna and not connected to him, it becomes a burden. It becomes a burden. Ravan's opulence became a burden for him. So much so it blinded him. And it was actually the offense he made to Sita Devi, more than the offense he made to Lord Ram by stealing his wife. It was the offense he made to Sita Devi by trying to compromise her chastity that brought his downfall. Very similar to the Battle of Kurukshetra was a consequence of the attack made on Draupadi and the compromising of her chastity. Actually, this chapter and the purports talk a lot about the chastity of a woman and the strength that gives her, and the power and potency it gives her, and how that potency, that power requires protection, because everything valuable is protected. Look in your home, what do you have an insurance for? You only have an insurance for your valuables. You don't insure the useless things. You have an insurance for your garbage bin. You don't do that. So you have an insurance for those things that are valuable. So, sometimes I think devotees might be upset when they read about, if they're in a body where they read about how it should be protected. You know how children should be protected, the elderly, brahmanas, women. And I think one of the reasons might also be because in the name of being protected, many people have exploited women. Many people have exploited children. People have also exploited the elderly. So, yeah, there's many ways, many ways to look at this, but that particular Ashoka tree, I don't have any more detail on, I'm afraid.
Okay. I'll just keep waiting until someone puts their hands up. But the second question is something that you actually said, that there are various versions of the Ramayana. And obviously, we look at the Valmiki Ramayana, but there is also Tulsidas Ramayana. And I think the two differences are there is the Lakshman Rekha, and obviously the Tulsidas Ramayana is a poetic Ramayana more than anything. So I believe that was done so that people in general could understand the Ramayana, because not many people were familiar with Sanskrit and the way it was written by Valmiki.
I mean, Sanskrit is poetic anyway because it's sung.
Sure. Yeah. No, I understand that. But what is your take on the version from, and I know you mentioned this within this class, but what should people be taking on the Tulsidas Ramayana as it is, as a proper
I don't have a personal take. I've been guided by what Srila Prabhupada says, and Srila Prabhupada generally would say we should stick to the Bhagavatam version, the Valmiki version, and he made a comment about staying away from versions which have more of a political angle. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes when renditions are made that are easier for people to understand, where a person may not be able to consolidate something themselves, they may present it slightly differently to make it more digestible. But in doing so, that takes away some of the glory from the Lord, because it kind of says, well, I don't understand why you're doing this. I'm just going to change the story a little bit, So Prabhupada said it's more the mentality. It's not so much there's the actual inaccuracies, or the person who's written it might not be from this group. It's more the mentality. What is the mentality? What's the heart set? What is the mood of the person writing and explaining? You look at Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, he calls it Bhagavad Gita as it is, because he gives nothing else other than what Krishna actually directly says to Arjun. He expands on that, he explains it more deeply, but he keeps Krishna's motive consistent. He keeps Krishna's position in the Bhagavad Gita consistent. Krishna is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not that he's there as in an allegorical way, or there's a moral to the story, or actually we're all Krishna and the conversation between Krishna and Arjun is just a battle within ourselves. And that, Prabhupada moves away from all of that. So, and actually the other thing I would say is, if we read Bhagavatam, there's not really, if our purpose is in what we hear about Krishna, whichever form, our purpose is how is this going to deepen my bhakti? We shouldn't really need to read so many outside things, because actually they end up leaving a lot of people confused, because people get confused and distracted by details of pastimes. And we've heard so many pastimes about Krishna from so many places, but then when you actually hear the pastimes in the Bhagavatam and the way they explain, now the Rasa Leela is so misunderstood by so many people, but you come back to the Bhagavatam version of it and it's very different. You know, it's explained differently. It's explained with affection. And also even the humanity of it, if you looked at it from a human lens, is very different. Krishna's a child, the gopis are children. You know, the dancing of children is innocent. So yeah, I think we have to be careful. Prabhupada warned us from, he said, don't, you know, basically color outside the lines until you have maturity. Don't read outside the curriculum until you have maturity, right? So we stick to the books of the curriculum until we have strength and maturity in our spiritual life, where even if we were to read something outside, it doesn't move our core understanding. It doesn't move the tattva. So if you're reading, if you're trying to understand what books you should read, stick to Srila Prabhupada's books. I mean, Krishna Dharma Prabhu has also done a beautiful Ramayana, which is very easy to read, very accurate, and very devotional. So I highly recommend that Ramayana if you want to read outside and further on from, you know, more detail from what's in the actual Bhagavatam itself.
Thank you, Mataji. Sadhu
Sadhvi
Mataji,
had it, yeah.
would you like to ask a question?
Hare Krishna,
Thank you very
Sadhvi.
much today. Hey,
Sadhvi, you are like a always. I think every day of your life is like a spiritual retreat. I see you on every single class.
I hope it is okay.
It's wonderful. I love to see you. How can I
Thank
serve you? You have a question or comment?
Yes, now a question. In verse 6 to 7, there's mentioned that Lord Ram have defeated Lord Parashurama. How to understand this, please? Thank you.
Krishna fighting himself. So, you know, just like Krishna's activities and appearance are transcendental, so is his disappearance. And if you look at the way the different incarnations of the Lord leave, they leave in unusual ways. They leave in unusual ways. You know, Krishna leaves on the premise of an arrow piercing his ankle. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What's an arrow going to do to him? You know, he was in the middle of the Battle of Kurukshetra, surrounded by, you know, the greatest warriors, and he came out unscathed. You know, so what's it going to do to him? So his disappearance is bewildering to people. He's just left with an arrow. Look at Lord Balaram. You know, you look at Lord Balaram's disappearance. He meditates on himself. He turns into Anantashish, and then he swims away. Okay, slips away. So Parashuram, to wrap up his activities, he does it himself through a different, you know, incarnation. So these are the joyful, joyous, exciting, and unusual pastimes. And they are transcendental because they break human rules, demigod rules. They are beyond what anybody else can do. I mean, can you wrap up your pastimes by making an expansion of yourself to wrap up your life? No. You know, so this is how we understand it. That Parshuram is an incarnation of the Lord, but his time was to leave. So Lord Rāmacandra, he himself disposed of himself.
Something is, I don't know if I have misunderstood or if I have understood it right. Lakshmana is Baladev, right?
Yes, Balaram, yes.
And Bharata is Pradyumna.
He's Prajumna, okay.
Pradyumna. And Aniruddha is
Shatrugna, yes.
Yes. Have I understood it right? That they are also
Vishnu Tattva. Yeah, but if you want to understand the Tattva of it, actually, you have Krishna, then you have Balaram, then from Balaram you have Shankarshan, Anirudh, Vasudeva, and Prajumna. Okay, and then they expand again, and then from that Sankarshan comes Mahavishnu, Kishore Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and from Kishore Vishnu you get all the other incarnations. So yes, you can understand it like that, but they are expansions of expansions. But as we hear in this, it doesn't matter if you're an expansion of an expansion or a partial expansion, it's still the same Krishna. It's just different faces for different functions.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the other controversial aspect in the Ramayana was the fact that Lord Ramacandra hid behind a tree when he was trying to help, is it Sugriv, and fight his brother. And people could take that sort of wrongly in that sort of sense. So could you elaborate on that pastime, if that's okay?
Yeah. How do we understand Lord Ramacandra behaving in actually, even for Lord Ram, that's quite out of character, right? To not be transparent, to hide behind a tree. But remember what I said? You can't cheat Krishna. If you cheat Krishna, you'll be cheated. And sometimes you'll be cheated directly at his hands. So, although he comes as a human, like Lord Ram is clearly a human. Okay, he comes as a human. It's the pastimes are they very clearly explain. He comes as a human. He comes as a human leader, taking birth in a human family. And although there is a side to him that very much we see from his pastimes follows the rules and regulations for humankind, varna, ashram, religiosity. But there is a side to him that is also always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he exercises that side of him to please the devotees and also to bewilder those who are envious of him. You know, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, fools deride me. You know, they don't understand my activities. What makes someone foolish? Again, this desire to experience and enjoy the Lord's opulence separately from him. And what does that make people do? Cheat. Okay? So he exercised his right as a Supreme Personality of Godhead to cheat someone who cheats. If we cheat in our spiritual life, and there's a very obvious cheating that many of us, unfortunately, at some point or another, become vulnerable to. And that cheating is we're so busy trying to be recognized as a devotee or look like a devotee that we spend little time actually being a devotee. And then one day you wake up and you realize your devotion hasn't grown. Okay? This is Krishna not cheating us, but we've cheated ourselves. So that interaction with the Lord for Sugriva's brother, he brought it on himself because of his previous activities. Because he cheated, he lied, he'd broken moral code, he'd broken moral code for a king, and even more so, he'd offended a Vaishnava. So the consequences, actually, he got off lightly. He actually got off lightly. It's a blessing. He got to be in Lord Ram's pastimes, you know, and this is what I'm saying. We have to be careful with when the Lord comes. Although he comes and plays a particular role, he's a particular varna, he's in a particular ashram, he's being something or someone. At the same time, he's also always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You look at Krishna when he comes as Varahadev. He doesn't only behave like a boar. There are some very boar-like things. He comes in, he sniffs out, and he finds, you know, Bhumi, and then he picks her up on his tusks. But he's so romantic with it as well, okay? And but he doesn't only behave like a boar. He also fights like a warrior, you know, with a demon. And he speaks transcendental words like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now you could go, well, why didn't he stick to the conduct of a boar and only fight with his hooves? Why, you know, boars don't have, you know, maces, you know, boars don't have weapons. What? He cheated. No, he didn't. He's always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And sometimes he's a boar, sometimes he's a tortoise, sometimes he's a beautiful woman like Mohini Murthy, sometimes he's a human king like Lord Ram. So yes, if you measure him like a human, he cheated. But as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, no, he dished out, and actually mercifully dished out. Vali got much better than he should have. He got better than what he deserved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mataji. Janakaniya Mataji, would you like to ask your question? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm just confused with this different version of the scriptures in a sense that we straightforward, we have a lot of lectures, we have a lot of scriptures to learn about Bhagavad Gita as it is and so on, and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But in the Ramayana, we have such different versions. For a neophyte like me, we're not having free way of learning so we can understand it a lot better. I like you said, we heard about the series on TV, and that was it. How do we get into this and understand the truth about what the messages are about?
Stick with the Bhagavatam. Honestly, stick with the Bhagavatam version and put aside the TV series version. The TV series version may have given you a taste. It may have opened your heart and made you receptive. So often when we're entertained by something or it evokes certain emotions, we stay with it, we hear it. But we want to go beyond the story. So stick with the Bhagavatam. Don't confuse yourself. You don't have to become an expert in the detail of Ramayana. What Shastra is there to do is to increase our affection for the Lord. And the best way to increase our affection for him is to hear about him from the lips of someone who has affection for him, like Shukadev Goswami, like Srila Prabhupada. So don't get yourself, forget about the series. I would say just forget about the series.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but when we do hear snippets of it, it's the sweetest story ever. It's so captivating. Yeah, the Ramayana is beautiful.
Ramayana is beautiful, but Bhagavatam has
It's a
Ramayana in it.
song. It's a song. It's so beautiful. Yeah, but maybe we can propagate a platform where we can learn more about
There
it.
are devotees. I'm pretty sure there are some devotees in Chopati. If you look online, they've done really nice Ramayan Katha. You can also read, like I said, Krishna Dharma Prabhu's Ramayan as well, because that's based on the teachings of the Bhagavatam. It's, again, steeped with devotion, and the detail in there is accurate, and the discrepancies are also, addressed. So this is what I'm saying. Try and stick to speakers and authors who are coming in the mood and in succession of Srila Prabhupada. You don't have to search lots of literature. You can read the Pastimes of Lord Rāmacandra in the Bhagavatam, and you can read Krishna Dharma Prabhu's Ramayan. And if you want, you can. I know there are, because I've seen the posters for them. There are devotees from Chapati who have done a series on Ramayan. Radhanath Swami has also given a lot of classes on the Ramayan, really, really beautiful classes on Ramayan. You can find them on ISKCON Desire Tree. You can find them on his website.
Hare Krishna.
They go,
Thank
Shubh
you.
Vilas Prabhu at Chapati. That's it. Thank you. I couldn't remember who'd given the classes. So yeah, whatever language you're trying to access, you'll be able to find them. There's no shortage of devotional explanations of Lord Ramachandra's beautiful pastimes.
Thank you very much.
And when someone speaks about anyone with love, there is a story that plays in your mind and heart that is more beautiful than any television series. Because the mind and heart, and especially when we see with a spiritualized heart, we have the vision to see things that the mind cannot concoct.
Do we have stories like Krishna, fun-loving stories of Lord Ram? Because he seems so serious.
I think I don't know the devotees who've heard the classes by Shubh Vilas Prabhu. I don't know if he goes into Lord Ram's childhood as well. I know Radhanath Maharaj addresses some of Lord Ramachandra's youth and his dynamic with his parents and his brothers. So yes, I think, and also the thing is, we have to also see our motives. Why do we want to hear the fun-loving pastimes? Because although the Lord's pastimes give great pleasure, our purpose shouldn't be to seek to be entertained. Because again, it's this mood of, oh, okay, well, what am I getting out of this? And actually, they are naturally, because these pastimes are super excellent, you will find that, wow, I've never heard anything like this before. But when we hear with the ear and the heart, there is a movie that plays in the heart and mind that no television screen can ever create for you, no matter how good the CGI and the acting gets.
Haribol, yes. But with Krishna, you see, we got spoiled because it's all fun and loving.
No, it's not all fun and loving. There's plenty of stuff in
Well, I
Krishna's
know,
pastimes which are difficult.
it ends up all the time with that, good ending. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. If I can finally end with something that you always talk about, which is devotional service. So I'd like to ask you a question on what snippets or what nuggets should we take out from Lord Hanuman's service to Lord Ram?
His devotion to Lord Ram was single-pointed. It was unalloyed. It was unmotivated. And it was completely for the pleasure of Lord Ram. Hanuman, being a great, great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, carries this mood with him that he freely wants to share that love. He freely wants to share that love with others. And Krishna's devotees, Lord Ram's devotees, are more magnanimous than him. Hanumanji has a humble, loving heart, a heart whose doors are always open to welcome in those who want to imbibe that similar mood of selfless devotional service that is empowered by Devi Shakti, and not Purushakara Shakti alone. You know, I was talking about going beyond your karma. Purushakara Shakti is the power of mankind, the power of material nature. But Deva Shakti is this divine empowerment. And divine empowerment actually comes to us through the Lord's devotees. So we may not always understand Lord Ram's pastimes. We may not always understand his dynamic with Sita or with his brothers or with his parents. We may not even always agree with them, but we can certainly take pleasure and appreciate Sri Hanuman's service to Lord Ram. We can certainly look up to Hanuman and we can petition him to help make our hearts soft and submissive and receptive, and to not be misguided by the challenges that our mind might throw up when it's confused and it is not able to understand the Lord. And Hanumanji is available. Even today, even in this day and age, he's just a prayer away. You know, we know he was manifest also on the Battle of Kurukshetra, right? On the Pandavas' flag. It wasn't just a, iron on ink stain. He was actually present there. It describes how you can hear Hanuman's roar and cry from that flag. He was manifest. He was present. So actually, Hanumanji is still here. He's very present. By calling him, you don't have to even recite the Hanuman Chalisa. Just think of him. This is the power of a Vaishnava. You think of them and their blessings are with you. So thank you so much for welcoming me back. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to go a little deeper into this chapter with all of you. I wish you all well. Hare Krishna.